Gracie always knew. A doll's lesson. This is the story of Gracie, a little girl who began writing poems at 8 years old in 1968 and never really stopped. Through flash fiction, we follow her life, one glimpse of truth at a time, from childhood wonder to grown-up understanding. Each story is inspired by a real poem from the book We Will Have Morning Smiles, capturing what Gracie was feeling, learning, and becoming. Gracie's story is drawn from my own, shaped by the words I wrote, the lessons I lived, and the moments I still carry. Maybe, in some way, her journey feels like yours too. Welcome to the life of Gracie, from 1968 to now. Here is the short story of what inspired Gracie's first poem at the tender age of 8 years old. 8-year-old Gracie always knew a doll's lesson. Gracie held her favorite doll, its painted smile forever unchanged. She studied it closely, realizing that while she had learned to run faster, dream bigger, and feel deeper, the doll had stayed exactly the same. Time moved through her like the changing seasons, shaping her in quiet, steady ways, while the doll stayed exactly the same. That's when she understood. Time only changes the living. She gave the doll a pretend life, imagining it full of thoughts and adventures. But sometimes, late at night, another thought crept in. What if someone imagined me into being, giving me my lines, feelings, and story? Church was as much a part of her life as brushing her teeth or saying good night. And with church came God, expected, unquestioned, and ever present. But the older she got, the more she wondered, where is God? Why is God? Her questions had grown more detailed now, shaped by the things she was starting to notice about the world and about herself. Those questions were still too big to hold, but she carried them anyway. She thought often about who she was becoming. There was one thing she wanted to be more than anything: kind, really kind. The type of kind that came from the inside, not just because someone was watching. At 8 years old, she failed at that many times, but it remained ever present in her spirit. Most of the time, she was kind, but not always. Sometimes she snapped at her little brother and was mean to her little brother. Sometimes envy crept in like a thief. She felt that and knew jealousy was not something to cling to. Still, deep down, she understood those moments didn't define her. They were passing clouds, not her sky. Something inside her, some glowing ember she couldn't name, kept telling her that kindness mattered more than almost anything else. It was what made people beautiful, not their clothes or their hair, or even their words. She felt kindness was like sunlight through a window, gentle, warm, and easy to miss if you weren't paying attention, but everything felt better there. However, the world didn't always agree. Gracie had started to notice contradictions. Adults talked about love, forgiveness, and doing what was right. They sang about it in church, prayed about it at dinner, and nodded solemnly as church leaders spoke. But then the same people would gossip, lose their tempers, or ignore someone who needed help. It confused her. How could they forget so quickly? She wanted to believe people meant well, that they were just trying, like she was. But part of her couldn't shake the feeling that some were only pretending, that they wore kindness like a costume and took it off when it no longer served them. And then, with a quiet sigh, she admitted it. Sometimes I do that too. The realization didn't crush her, but settled into her chest with weight. Maybe being good wasn't about getting it right every time. Perhaps it was about not giving up when you got it wrong. Gracie didn't like the idea of perfection. Something about it always felt impossible, like a game no one could win. And yet, she couldn't help but chase it. Even at 8, she felt the pressure to be the one who got it right, who made things better, who didn't let anyone down. Somewhere along the way, without meaning to, she'd written herself a silent set of rules. Be better. Fix it. Don't disappoint. She didn't know it then, but that quiet urge to rescue and make things right would shape much of her life until years later, when she finally began to see its weight and learn a different way of being. You see, Gracie was, by nature, a rescuer, but she didn't know that yet. For now, at 8 years old, she knew only this: being a doll would be so much easier. Dolls didn't have to ask questions, feel pain, or wrestle with what was right. Dolls didn't worry about being enough. It was the first time she realized how heavy it could be to be real, and maybe the first clue that she was beginning to understand more than most 8-year-olds. That's when Gracie wrote her first poem at 8 years old. She called it Thanksgiving. Follow for more of Gracie's life. You'll find her first simple, idealistic poem, written at 8 years old, called Thanksgiving in this poetry book. Thanks for listening to Gracie's story, and don't forget to subscribe.